I think the winters, I think like long, dark, lonely winters makes you tweak a little bit, like there's seasonal effectiveness and that is real. And I struggle against that a lot. And then there's the mania of summer, where if you're a person like, for me, like I said, I'm like 50% extrovert, 50% introvert. So like I want to socialize and I will socialize like to default, but I still need all that alone time. So then like after everybody goes to bed at like 4 a.m. in the summertime, I'm like, now is my time. So then I stay awake by myself till like 10 a.m. and then sleep for a few hours. And I did that for a lot of years. And I think that affects the way your brain works and your need for finding ways to cope with it.
I dreamt of the month of November. I didn't need to fear a thing. I wondered if I could remember how to whistle and how to sing. Sing, sing, sing. I'm growing tired of this illness, and I haven't even caught the thing. How can you breathe so free and so guiltless when we are not allowed to sing? Sing, sing, sing. I don't know if things will ever be the same. I wonder if I still have meaning, if my tree falls but no one can hear. This country divided and leaning in the direction of oppression and fear. Fear, fear, fear. We knew we'd be here for a while, so you'd better hurry up and wait. Body aching, but I should just smile, always edging till we meet our fate. Fate, fate, fate. I don't think things will ever be the same. I dreamt of the month of November. I didn't need to fear a thing.
Alaska feels very widespread, you're far from people. The landscape is vast and open. Coming from Philadelphia, where I grew up, like right outside of Philadelphia, the population density is so different. And so here there really is just like an actual sense of emotional space in the population density, and it just really feels distant from people. You get on a plane from Anchorage and fly to Fairbanks, and for the entirety of that flight until the last 5 minutes, you're over nothing but like pitch black darkness for miles and miles. So there's, I think, like a sense of space and solitude that comes with this state. And then there's also this sense of like majestic beauty that comes from this environment. It's like an extremely, it can be like an aggressive environment, with the snowstorms and that, and a manic environment with the summer sun. And so there's this kind of like sense of extremism in the landscape alone. And I think for me, that's both like something to be reckoned with on an emotional level, as far as feeling existential questions. You know, you're like, wow, I'm a tiny little dot in the middle of this weird vast wilderness, and I could disappear tomorrow, and there it is. You know, where like that sense of space reminds you of your how small we really are. I'm lacking the word right now, but I think there's that, and then I think also the beauty of this place is something that I feel like I constantly just want to share with other people, and so I think a lot of that art comes out of that.
This next tune is called Floorboards, and it was written as a means of therapeutic release when I was stressing. Apparently, I stress a ton, and I have to write all this music about it. But this is a song about heartbreak. Take a deep breath, soften your brow. You've been staring at the floorboards for an hour. You've been submerged, take this day head first. Every day we wake, we're given power. And they say words carry a magic. You can change your fate with simple white lies. Maybe all our lives are tragic when we view them through our own eyes. Maybe all this was just habit, and now it's time to say our goodbyes. Say our goodbyes. Say our goodbyes. Say our goodbyes. Take a deep breath, get out of bed. You've been trapped by all the dark thoughts in your head. Relish the light, the beauty of life, all the kindnesses that still have gone unsaid. And they say words carry a magic. You can change your fate with simple white lies. Maybe all our lives are tragic when we view them through our own eyes. Maybe all this was just habit, and now it's time to say our goodbyes. Say our goodbyes. Say our goodbyes. Say our goodbyes.
Music, I've been a lifer for sure. Like playing piano is my favorite activity in the universe. And that's always been in my life. And then I, started to play cello in middle school, but again, like very solitarily. I think the first time I ever jammed with another human, I must have been like 22. I'm a weird combination of like extrovert and introvert. It's a real thing. When I'm with people, I'm very extroverted. And you can be like, well, yes, that's what extroverts are. But then I have this very withdrawn sense of self as well that people don't see because it's the withdrawn part. But I spend a lot of time by myself and really enjoy spending a lot of time by myself. I like people a lot. Like I get happy to see people, but I like to just kind of like exist and sort of ebb and flow, at events and stuff. So I'm very solitary. I'm a solitary person in a sea of people that I enjoy being around, if that makes sense.
Neurosis, yes. Been struggling to breathe against the gnawing in my chest. And days go by. I like wearing a mask because you can't see me crying. Bound up too long. Now the salt is pouring out and we're drowning deep in sad songs. We needed this. Music to my ears is a different kind of bliss. Of your hand, we're in here, we're in waves, suffocating on the dry land. Reach out and feel. Been living in a daydream, can't remember what it's like to be real. We fell so hard, nation down, not allowed to go out past our backyard. The fires blaze, look into the pyre, it's time to find a new way. Leave home right out tonight, chase a fading midnight light again.
I think for a long time, like I just kind of existed as this human that was like, I like nature, I like swimming and making food. And then when I really started playing music regularly, like something changed, like a flip switched in my brain. And so then I started writing songs. And then I injured my vocal cords and I couldn't sing. And that's when I started writing poetry. And at that point, like ever since then, it's been really different. Now, like art is absolutely a daily part of my life that I rely on for emotional release, where there was a period when I didn't need that before. So that's where I feel like that artist moment changed. Poetry to me is an extremely solitary activity. You know what I mean? Like I don't do poetry slams. I wish I did. I don't know why I don't. I would love that. And we have really an awesome poetry scene in Anchorage. So many incredible poets. I would love to like go do that, but I don't. I find that like I wake up in the morning and I write a poem, and before I fall asleep I write a poem, and it's like me in my bed just like typing away on my phone, like, and so it's a really solitary activity, but I get a lot of emotional release out of it. Whereas music is a very communal emotional release, like when you are singing a song where the lyrics have emotional meaning and the piano part or whatever instrumental part, generally for me, I feel like the most emotive on piano. And so when I'm playing piano on a song, for example, like Amplified, which is a song I play with the super saturated sugar strings. And at the end, there's this like really vigorous piano part and this vigorous drum part, and the whole band's just like going, the bass is starting, the fiddle and the trumpet and the cello are just going, wild. And I feel like in those moments, like there is a visceral level of passionate release that comes with that. And that is, you cannot recreate that in poetry. I remember I played a show with the Sugar Strings at Willowa, and it was about a year after one of my friends had passed from cancer. And the last time I had played a show on that stage was with a band called the Chromies. And my friend who died from cancer was supposed to come to that show that night. We were opening for Everclear. It was like such a cool opportunity, and he loved Everclear. And I got him tickets to come to the show, and he ended up in the ICU, and he couldn't come to that show. And that was a really emotional night for me. But I found that it was even more emotional getting back on that same stage the next time with the Sugar Strings, and we played that song, and I just like burst into tears. I like couldn't. I like choked up so much I couldn't sing. And I just remember like there's this part where there's these big triplets on the piano, and I was just beating the living shit out of the piano, just beating it. Like, you know, like I was murdering the notes. Like there was no musicality. I was just beating the shit out of the piano because I was so sad and angry about the fact that, you know, life is unfair and we lose some really great people. I mean, like clearly it gets fired up now thinking about it too, you know, but I think that, you know, hopefully that stuff can come out musically as well as just like a violent release onto a digital instrument. You know, you couldn't have played like a guitar like that. The whole thing would have been broken. But, you know, I think there is something visceral about tactilely being able to express, you know. There's just something, yeah. I mean, it's like dance, that like physical release. And then you couple that tactile release on an instrument with a bunch of other people also just like playing their hearts out, and there's something just untouchable about that, you know.
This next tune is called Late Bloomers. It's for all of us out there who might have learned something a little bit after we needed to. My arms must be growing shorter, for I do not seem to reach out much these days. And my heart must be growing harder, for each time it fires up, it gains a thicker glaze. Why do I cry to the pictures of golden retrievers I see on TV? My bones must be growing brittle, for I cannot seem to fight the daily grind. And my mind must be growing fickle, for I tire of the thrill of smoke and mirrors and lies. Why must we be such a mess when we try to express after every new fall? Oh, we're just late bloomers. Just be early to the grave. Just late bloomers. Oh, or we'll just be early to the grave. My dreams must be growing vivid, for I cannot kid myself. They're seeming all too real, and my drive must be growing dried up. I fear each time I start, I'm destined just to fail. Where did I make a wrong these old ways. Oh, I'm a late bloomer. Oh, or I will be early to the grave. Oh, we're just late bloomers. Oh, we'll all be early to the grave.
In my lifetime, I have felt a distinctive shift in my mental health. And I would say I've felt two distinctive shifts. There was life up until art. Very I was a very excitable person and really friendly, but I was very, I never was depressed. As a kid, never suffered depression. As a teen, I had a sullen teen year. All through my 20s, totally very mid-range on the emotional spectrum. I felt a lot of joy, didn't feel a lot of sorrow. So I rode kind of at baseline or above. And then I started playing music, and those feelings were these huge spikes. And they were amazing, but then there would be this drop. And that was the first time I ever felt that. And I think it was a come down from the crazy adrenal spikes of performance. And that's when I first noticed it. And then I've always been kind of a night owl. And then my all-nighters became more frequent. And so, and this is all as I was coming back into being a single woman in my 30s after a near decade of being partnered with someone. So then it was I had my own choices about I'll just stay up forever now. And so I started staying up later and sleeping less, having these adrenal spikes from the mania of playing a wild show and then coming home alone and feeling really bad. And it kind of started getting my life started getting more manic. And I never really thought about that until I was in it and feeling these really deep sorrows and realizing that I was creating a lot. Found that the depression that I thought was always just seasonal winter depression started getting worse. And then there was just a lot of hard years, lost a lot of friends. Like I mentioned, I lost a friend to cancer, lost a friend to suicide, lost 2 friends in a plane crash. And the lows became worse, and they just sort of, there was a period in there where things got real bad. And I think it stayed pretty bad for a couple years. But I'm also a person who doesn't like to make other people feel uncomfortable or bad. So when I felt low, I would just retreat and sort of just go into my own world. So if people didn't see me, they'd be like, "Oh, you must be so busy." And I'd be like, "Yeah, I'm busy. Really, I'm just really sad." And just not, I'd still do my hustle, but yeah. So I think I was in some really deep depression for a while, especially after my friend's suicide. She was a musician as well. And like I said, you can't replace friends, and their memory is with you all the time. And so I've never been clinically diagnosed, but part of that, and I hope that I wouldn't be able to be identified with anything, because I want to believe that I'm a healthy individual, all this stuff, and that I don't have big things that I'm going to have to tackle. But the reality is I think there have been times that were either really, really severe, dangerously severe clinical depression. I have felt some intense things that probably mandated a visit to someone, and I never went. I think the reason I never went was being an artist. For many years I was uninsured, and I didn't feel I had access to mental health resources that I could afford. Part of it was the fear that they would want to put me on meds, and that I didn't know what meds would do to my manic creative energy. I was really afraid of that, because, I did become way more prolific when I stayed up all night, because you get in these manic spins, and then, you finally force yourself to go to bed, and you're laying in bed thinking about something. You start thinking about a word, and then it makes you think of another word, and then suddenly there's a line, and then you're up writing it down, and then you're like, okay, I'll go back down, and then you start thinking of more words, and it just like, it cycles in like a really wild way. And so then that means less sleep, which makes you more like tweaky and crazy and manic, and then more creative energy comes out of that. So I was really worried that if I ever went on mood stabilizers or antidepressants, that it would just make me kind of baseline again, and that I wouldn't feel moved to create. And I think there is a little bit of truth to that. Like when I don't feel tormented on a psychological level, which sounds dramatic, but like, I mean, like losing people in your life or any kind of traumatic event, whatever it is, whether it's personal or loss or something that happens to your family member or a friend, like when we feel trauma, like we have to release, we have to process. I look at it now and I'm like, oh my gosh, if I had known, like say it were situational depression that I were diagnosed with at the time, like after my friend's suicide, knowing that, I could have been like, oh wow, like there's so much to live for. I just can't see it right now because of the fact that I'm grieving so hard, you know? And so in a way, like all this fear of being identified as this thing actually was really, if I had been identified as that thing, I would have had the tools to understand what it was and move through it faster. And so, you know, thinking of those fears, while they're very reasonable to feel, you know, they are still, you know, they're still really just holding you back from getting the help you need to be able to exist with whatever your brain is feeling or offering you, essentially.
Is it sugar or is it salt? Either way, it ain't your fault. Days go by and I wonder when. Oh, I could see your face again. Yes, I could see your face again. Now I play this old guitar. Someone bashed in your old car. Plastic sheet over the rear. Said, why do we live in a world of fear? Why do we live in a world of fear? Time's been hard. Time's been hard on everyone. But we keep hanging on. We keep hanging on. We keep hanging on to sing our song. They say life is bittersweet. Sometimes lemons are what we eat. But I know I'll make it through as long as I share my table with you. As long as I share my table with you. So may your dreams be good when your days are not. And may we wake up thankful for what we've got. We may not have everything, but we've got each other and we can sing. Yes, we got each other and we can sing. Time goes by, blink of an eye, and then it's We keep hanging on to sing our song. Thanks for singing with me, y'all. Maybe the bad news sets us free. If that's the way it's gotta be. And if the sky is gonna fall, well, I'm just glad I got your call. 'Cause I just thought you didn't want bare bones. And the truth was hidden in my impatience in the end. Now the world is upside down,